Hey, good morning. Good to be with you here on a Wednesday. I hope you're doing well. Hope your day is going off or starting off on a good note. As I mentioned yesterday, we're in the midst of or about to have a heat wave around here. So we're going to look forward to that, I'm sure. But it's good to be with you. Good to be able to hang out for a few minutes and just share some thoughts from this amazing Word of God that we have and this amazing relationship that we have with the truth of that Word, right? Oh, my goodness. So let's say good morning. Oh, man, you guys all just jumping in here. This is great. Oh, my goodness. Jackie, good morning. Linda, good morning. Jane, Jade, how are you? Ada, good morning. Shalom. Yes. Susan and Bernadette, good to see you guys. Thank you so much. Maria, and good. Yeah, I think I got you all. I hope I did. Donna, Ann, good morning. I try to make sure I get everybody. Oh, there's Cindy popping in here. Okay. I can't. I always hope I get everybody's name as I'm looking at this list here. So good to be with you as always. And we're in Matthew 10. And yesterday I mentioned how when I was looking at this passage again, it really reminded me of when I used to be in the corporate business world. And, when I would start a new job, oftentimes I would be handed the S.O.P manual, the standard operating procedures manual that was, had been put together for the company so that I could get to know the company, find out what their uh, goals and objectives are, how they operate, what their rules and regulations were, all of that. And so as I was reading this, it really struck me that these instructions that Jesus gave to his disciples before sending them out to basically do what they had been seeing him doing and saying and all of that, right? This is kind of like that. It's a kingdom standard operating procedures uh, set of instructions. It's an S.O.P manual. So we looked at pretty much the first 8 verses yesterday of Matthew 10, and today we'll pick it up here in verse 9. And this is some interesting stuff here. He says to them, "Do not acquire gold or silver or copper for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or even 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for the worker is worthy of his support." And as I reread this and look at it afresh today, I'm saying to myself, wow, many of us, I think, have been on mission trips where we go to a foreign country usually with another group, with a group of people, and we stay there for a week or two doing whatever the activities are that are planned for that trip. And in most cases, we either self-fund it out of our own savings, or we will try to raise the money needed for the trip. And this is pretty much the standard way that we approach a missions trip. But in this case, Jesus tells them, just go. Don't pack anything. Now, I know you ladies are probably freaking out at the very thought of just taking off, going somewhere and not packing anything. All right. I mean, oh my gosh. Typically when we go on these sort of trips, and I've been on a number of them, and the luggage is huge and it's packed to the brim with all manner of what we consider to be life's necessities. Okay. And yet here Jesus is saying to these guys, just go. Just go. Don't worry about trying to get money together or taking extra clothing or sandals or whatever. Just go. I want you to really put yourself in that situation. Okay. because this is what Jesus is telling them. Pretty interesting, right? To really imagine yourself uh, just taken off somewhere, you know? I mean, I know that in today's, uh, in our society today, it does take money if we're going to go any distance. Now, they were being sent to various cities in the nation of Israel, which can be done by walking. And so, right, it's not as, I guess, a big a deal as we might consider if we were, going to take a trip to another country or even another continent. You know, that's a bit more involved. Though I have heard of people who God has spoken to. This has not happened to me, but I've heard of testimonies where God has said to people, I want you to go to the airport and buy a ticket to such and such a place. And the person has no money. And so now it comes down to, am I going to obey what the Lord is telling me? And am I simply going to just go with what I've got, which is nothing, and get on a plane? And invariably, people that have done this, someone has walked up to them and says, God spoke to me in a dream or in some other way and told me that I would meet you here and that I'm to give you this money for your trip. And walk up to the counter and buy the ticket, and there you go. And then they take that trip, and when they get there, they have no clue what they're going to do. Or maybe God has given them some insight onto it, but they don't know anybody. There's what are you going to do now? You see the sense of adventure that there is in this. I mean, when you really imagine being in that kind of situation, it could be scary. It really, I think, illustrates how much we trust Him. I'm being real here. If God told me to do that, okay, it would be a challenge. I mean, I think I could, really center myself in Him and just come to a place of peace and trust and say, okay, this is pretty crazy, but I'm going to do it. You know, but that's the challenge. And so when He spoke this to them, now it helped. I think it really helped that they were, He sent them out two by two. I love that because it honestly it makes it a whole lot easier. I've taken trips to Brazil by myself, and it is, I mean, it's not anywhere near like this where you're like, okay, we're going to get the money to go. Where what's going to happen when I get there. It's all planned out. I know someone's going to arrive at the airport at some point, and if they don't, I know how to contact them and say, hey, I'm here, where are you? You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, but even so, going by yourself, it's a bit more challenging because you're navigating all these different things, especially if you're going to a foreign country like Brazil where you're not quite up to speed on the language, which down there is Portuguese, right? So, but having someone with you, oh my gosh, so nice because you're sharing the experience, you're able to talk with one another and just encourage each other. So that's what Jesus did for them, making, I think, the whole idea a bit more easy to handle. But they were set out in that way. Now, am I saying that planning and raising money and all this sort of thing, paying for your own mission trip, that all of that is somehow wrong? Not at all. Not at all. This was the way that Jesus wanted to train His guys to just learn how to trust the Lord in this journey. And He will do that for us in who knows what ways. He knows the ways that we need for us to be trained to trust Him. And it might be that you are called to go on this kind of a total faith journey with the Lord. Others of us may have a different uh, learning experience in trusting Him. But that's really what Jesus is illustrating here for us is that there's going to be some aspect of any assignment that we get that's going to require us to trust him. In other words, what we're able to do in our own strength, with our own resources, is never going to be enough to fully carry out the assignment that he has for us. And so this bit of instruction here that he gives them, how it applies to you and I here in this 21st century, is that we have to realize that our assignments are going to require us to step out in faith in some way, okay? To trust him for some aspect of the completion of whatever he's showing us to do. He's going to make it so that what I've got in myself and what I have available to me is just absolutely not going to be enough to do what he's showing me has to be done. So I'm going to have to step out in faith and start doing whatever it is that he's called me to do, and trust that what's lacking, which really is actually, it's not lacking, right? Because he already has it. But what to me appears to be lacking, that is going to be provided at the right time. And that's really what he says, to them. He says, don't worry about taking extra stuff. The worker is worthy, right? What did he say here? He said, the worker is worthy of his support. The Greek word there actually means nourishment. And how nourishing is it when we experience God providing supernaturally for us, because there's no way I don't have it, I don't have it, Lord. But yet when we step out, he provides. And that's the key, right? Just simply being obedient, simply stepping out in faith, that frees the Lord to release something to us that he couldn't have done before if I hadn't stepped out, if I hadn't obeyed in some way. So we can have that kind of experience with him, where we're growing in our ability to trust him as he, challenges us with greater and greater assignments that require more and more trust in him. Just going to step out and watch him do what only he can do. And so that was, what he wanted for them to learn. And then he goes on to tell them further about what to do when they got to their destination, or destinations in this case, right? He says, this is now where verse 11, he says, and enter into whatever city or village you enter. So into whatever city or village. In other words, wherever you end up, I guess he must have sent them in certain directions, and said, just, you have this area, you have that area. And they basically probably were more or less dividing up the nation of Israel into territories. So here Jesus says, whatever city or village that you enter into, right, inquire who is worthy in it. Who is worthy? Interesting. And abide there until you go away. So come into the city, and I think it's Luke in his account of this, that he says, ask for the man of peace. Okay. So culturally back then, this idea of who is worthy, the man of peace, that, because remember, this is a tribal culture, right? The Semitic tribes, this whole population was very tribal, nomadic. I mean, think about Abraham, right? He had his tribe, and they traveled all over, and that was still kind of the culture of the day. So what Jesus was telling them to do was find out who is considered to be the leader in this particular city or town. And it's not even so much who may have an official title. I don't know if they had mayors back then or whatever, but it was really the idea was, well, who is someone that is looked up to by that town, that city, that village, right? Who is that person? And most times, you'll, as you come in, you'll be meeting people, the townspeople, and you talk to them and you say, so who is that person, that everyone looks up to, who's really like the leader of this place? And without question, they'll know who that is. And they'll say, oh, that's so and so down the street there. And so they were instructed to go to that person and to start their ministry right there. And when, we mentioned yesterday how the disciples were instructed to heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons, right? That was their job when they got to these places. So what would they do? Okay, they've now introduced themselves to this man who is kind of like a tribal leader for that particular area. And they would say, are there any needs here that we can help you with? Because we are representatives of the kingdom of God. And if there was someone in his family or in his, connections that he had who fit that description of needing healing, needing freedom, maybe had just died, just think about it. Now they're there. They can release the power of God and demonstrate the reality of God's kingdom. And now all of a sudden, this leader, this person who everybody looks up to, becomes a believer. And so the disciples can then spend some time with this family and begin to teach them truth, begin to impart to them, the revelation that they had learned from being with Jesus. Can you begin to see how easy this is to replicate in our time? There is always going to be a man of peace, or will be balanced here and say a woman, right? It doesn't have to be a man. Back then it did, because that was their culture. But today, there is going to be a person of peace, a person who the Bible calls worthy. Why? Because they have become someone that people trust, that people look up to, that people come to. And when you engage someone like that, and you demonstrate to them the reality of God's presence and his power, and they become a believer, well, guess what? You have now made it possible for your influence as a disciple, as a ambassador of the kingdom, to immediately become extended to that person's family and all of their close connections. I mean, this is a genius strategy. It really is. So that you, in having this relationship now with that kind of a person, you simply say, you know what? If you're interested, I would love to come to your home. Or if you're already in the home, I would love to come back to your home and just spend some time with you. Maybe once a week we can come together and pray, and I can show you what I've learned, what the Bible talks about, and how to just know God better in your life. It'll be a rare occurrence that that person says, nah, I'm not interested. Because why? They've just been touched by God through you. They've just experienced something amazing, supernatural, right? Because you either healed them, or you healed somebody in their family, or some close connection that they have. Somebody, something happened. And so now they are wide open to learning and growing and becoming, having this relationship with the Lord. Just, it's amazing. And so that's what Jesus said. And then he goes on to talk about this idea of blessing, right? He says, as you enter the house, give it your greeting. And if the house is worthy, let your greeting of peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your greeting of peace return to you. So, again, culturally, this was something that they would do. They would say, they would speak a blessing over the home and the family that was there. And Jesus is saying, do that. Now, if it turns out that you've made a, well, not a mistake, but you were misinformed, how about that? And this person in their house really isn't what people say, or that this person may be a person of influence, but they're just evil. All right. And they have no interest in God, or no interest in, knowing him or whatever. Just take it back and go your way. Right. There's no arguing here. There's no, trying to debate and, convince, persuade. It just is what it is, right? This person that you thought was going to be a good connection turns out not to be. Okay, sorry. Take it back. Have a nice day. All right. That's all we have to do. It doesn't require, again, the arguing and whatever. If the person's not ready to hear, you're wasting your time, your breath, your energy, and you may even push the person further away from God the more you try to argue with them and debate and all of that. So Jesus here is simply saying, just go, right? And then even further, oh my goodness, and whoever does not receive you nor heed your words as you go out of that house or that city, shake off the dust of your feet. That's like, you're making a statement that, well, we don't want anything to do with you because you are really rejecting God himself. And Jesus pronounces this really kind of scary judgment. He says, truly I say to you, it'll be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah, as wicked and perverted as those cities were. It'll be more tolerable for them in the day of judgment for that than for that city. So, Jesus here is covering a lot of ground concerning how we should relate to people and places into which we are going as part of our assignment, or whatever that assignment leads us into. There are going to be people that are opposed to who we are and what we want to do. And he's just warning us, that's you're going to run into that. And here's what you do. If they're not going to receive you, in other words, if they don't want you around and they don't want to hear anything that you're saying, well, that's their choice. They're free to make that decision, but you are just as free to recognize that, all right, then I don't want anything. I don't want any part of you either. And so shaking the dust off. I remember when I was a very young Christian, I I was helping another married couple who were born again, and they were the youth leaders the of the youth group in the local Episcopal church. Now, if you're not familiar with the Episcopal denomination, they're a pretty old-fashioned, evangelical denomination. They're like one step removed from Catholicism, right? They still have a lot of the same kinds of liturgy that Catholics have, but they're considered to be Protestant. So you can see they're pretty traditional. Well, this couple they were born again, and they were bringing the kids to these gospel rallies that were going on here in New Jersey at that time. And so somehow I got involved with them, and I was helping them and just, doing what I could to encourage the kids and discipling them and all this sort of thing. Well, I showed up one night to the church to be, to participate in the group meeting, and the pastor meets me at the door, puts his arm around me, and walks me right back out. And so we no longer require your services. And then he turned around and shut the door. Well, I was so insulted. I walked across the street and stamped my foot and said, I shake the dust off. Listen, I don't know that was appropriate, but this just, I'm sorry, it reminded me of that time. I think it can be appropriate at certain times where, what I liken it to is that we're just really saying, Lord, they're not ready yet, but they need to be made ready. And so, withdrawing the blessing and just saying, okay, if they're going to be, if they're going to allow the enemy to influence them, we'll let him take that to its, logical conclusion, which is never good. And maybe that'll be a wake-up call. I think that's what Jesus really was saying here, is that if they're not going to receive what you have, who you are, okay, let them go, walk away, and just say, Lord, I trust that, you know, that they're going to wake up, that you're going to wake them up, that there's going to be some kind of wake up call that will cause them to call out and cry out to you. So I hope that's helpful for you. I mean, to me, it's fascinating to look at all this and try to understand how it fits with our, contemporary culture and time frame. And I think what the Lord's shown me about this is a good way to look at it. You may have other ideas, and please feel free. This is not the final word, on what this looks like. Um, but I think we'll pick up this again tomorrow and hopefully finish up his instructions to them about their missionary journeys and our assignments. So I hope that's helpful for you. Let me say good morning to the rest of this awesome breakfast club. Let's see, who do we got here that I haven't said hello to? Gloria, good morning. Elaine, um, wow. Medapali, I hope that's right. Good morning to you. Scott, good morning. Patty, good to see you as always. Donna, how are you? I think we're good. All right. Thank you again. I appreciate so much you guys hanging out with me. And thank you to those of you that share this with your friends. I'm so blessed to see new folks jumping in because you shared this. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have questions or you'd like to chat about anything, email or Facebook message. I'd love to hear from you. Have an awesome day. Stay cool. And look forward to being back with you tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern. So get out there and you know what to do. All right. Talk to you tomorrow.